Brands Hatch Indy is not just a historic track, but it's a track that's never shy of any action, given that it's 6 corners over 1.2 miles. So over a short lap where it's incredibly difficult to overtake, you're going to get a bit more bumping and door rubbing than you probably would anywhere else this side of Knockhill. But at least Knockhill has that run up to the hairpin as a decent overtaking run. Brands? Yeah. And during qualifying on Coronation Day, it was a wet affair with drivers going off left, right and centre, but this isn't Formula 1. There's nowhere near as much spray being lobbed off the back of these things, so it's a bit easier for them to run in the wet. And they also have wipers, which helps, but it didn't stop a few drivers falling foul of the weather and bringing out the red flags. But the actual race day was completely dry, and we finally got to see what these new tyre rules are about before, everybody cringed themselves into a quantum singularity before the start of the Miami Grand Prix. Now, the tyre rules are something I mentioned in the last BTCC race weekend review, but we never got to see it because, well, it was typical Britain and chucking it down. So let's just quickly go over what the rules are and how this works under the current era of racing, because it does have an interesting element of strategy to it. At every race except for Thruxton, Croft and Snetterton, the drivers have to run the option tyre at least one race over the 3, which is a variation on a rule that's been there previously. Now, just like in Formula 1, the softer tyres are faster, take less time to warm up and provide more grip, but they wear out faster. Now, 2 years ago when ballast was a thing, these tyres could get absolutely rinsed due to the extra weight being lobbed around, and now that's all gone, and the balance of performance is done through the hybrid deployment per lap thing. This actually works out a little bit better knowing that weight isn't going to be a factor. So like I say, it brings in that strategy element. How are you going to go about it? If you're at the front and you've only got, say, 4 or 5 laps of hybrid available to you, do you take the soft tyre to offset the lack of hybrid and use the performance of the softs to keep you going at a decent pace, so you then use the hybrid later when the tyres are dropping off? Or do you go with the mediums and use the fact that Brands is very tricky to overtake at, so it doesn't really matter, and then say the softs are coming through the field in race 3, assuming the reverse grid draw goes in your favour? Now, as it was, both the front 2 runners in Camish and Turkington took the white-walled softs for race 1, and Turkington got the absolute mother of all starts in his rear-wheel drive BMW, and then ran away with the race, able to save his hybrid later on to defend from Sutton. The first race was reduced by several laps because once again these touring car drivers have issues surviving the first lap. Now, over the years I've been doing this, I've made many a joke that kind of exaggerates this whole elbows out leaning on each other Sunday League football type of motorsport, but it is concerning when you see safety cars or red flags on opening laps, and it seems to be more often than not that this is the case. In this instance, Stephen Jelly moved across the nose of Dan Rowbottom coming through the final corner, and it resulted in a multi-car pileup that caused 45 minutes of stoppage. It was basically a carbon copy of what happened between Hill and Sutton in the first race at Donington last time out, and if that incident was anything to go by, you would have thought Rowbottom would have copped some sort of penalty. But no. That got some people on social media a little bit riled up because usually the stewards are pretty good at this kind of thing. In the interim though, we had the first look at the Legend series, these 7/8 scale replicas of American cars from the 1930s that are so tiny they can go 3 or 4 wide virtually anywhere. They're powered by a motorbike engine and go through virtually every corner on full opposite lock. There have been a couple of nasty shunts in them recently though. 4 cars were involved in an incident at Paddock Hill yesterday, as these cars are basically open wheelers without being open wheelers, and at Cadwell Park last weekend or the weekend before, a guy rolled it so many times Wes Borland and Fred Durst wrote a song about it. It's one of those series that you see crop up, a series you've never heard about, but you watch it and go, bloody hell, these things are epic, and I'd love to have a go in one. And seeing Paul O'Neill's face light up about them when he was asked about them was absolutely brilliant. It's just typical Paul O'Neill, really. But the whole day's racing was sort of brought down by a total anti-climax, really. Ricky Collard in the Toyota stripped of a maiden win thanks to those little buggers called track limit infringements. Now, Brands is one of those kinds of tracks where you're always on the edge. The exits of Graham Hill and Paddock Hill are like they are to stop all manner of crap being dragged onto the circuit, and they're fit for exploitation if you're trying to keep someone behind or catch up to somebody. But the people upstairs decided that with a couple of laps left on the board, Collard had exceeded those track limits too many times, and imposed a 10-second time penalty for the trouble, which annoyed a lot of people. It's all part of a new MS UK thing where it's put both wheels over the white line and it's an infringement, and it appears that they're not giving 2 hoots about whether or not time was gained. It's a very black and white, you went over type of thing. I've got a mate who works with one of the Formula 4 teams, and he said that the teams were told it was sensors only for the weekend, but later said in general the stewarding has been quite confusing. which is a shame because, like I said, things are usually pretty good on that end. Much better than what you get in Formula 1. Probably didn't help matters that literally 3 corners later, Sutton's Ford goes across the grass to overtake the Toyota. Had Sutton kept the position, I think it would have been looked into, but since Ricky got the position back, it was all fine. If I was in the steward's office, I probably would have gone, yeah, no, you're not overtaken on the grass. I don't care if he put you there, you've overtaken him. It also doesn't help that viewers at home aren't getting any information on this either. There's no graphics, there's no pre-race piece on where the track limits are going to be enforced, that kind of thing. There's nothing. So I think confusion and lack of knowledge is fueling the online stuff. And Tim Harvey afterwards was saying, look, if you're going to police track limits, police them everywhere. Don't just pick and choose, because drivers are going to try and exploit the fact that there's no track limits policing on this particular corner or something like that. You know what I mean. Speaking of which, this kicked off a bunch of conspiracy theories on the internet. And while it is true that Ash has been on the receiving end of some good fortune for things, Hill getting penalised for what was Ash's fault at Donington and Collard going wide too often, and to be honest, it looked like they were as bad as each other for the track limits, but the whole it's fixed for Sutton stuff just makes you look like an idiot. While Sutton is a very quick driver and can be a bit of a whiner that hates getting a return on what he's dished out, you can't cry fixing in this instance. And at the same time, Ash Sutton fans on the internet are starting to act like Ronnie O'Sullivan fans when it comes to the snooker, or Max Verstappen fans in the case of comparing it to Formula 1. But either way, we've seen some top-notch racing in the opening 2 rounds of the season. Snetterton is up next, which will definitely be a good one for the tyre strategy, and it's earlier in the year compared to normal, so it'll be interesting to see how these new tyre rules pan out on a longer track. It'll probably be a good barometer of whether they actually do work and that Brands wasn't just a one-off. Snetterton also being the longest track, as it so happens. And since it's one of the 2 tracks where they have to use all 3 compounds of tyre over the race weekend, then the strategy really will kick in because softs are going to get burned out really quickly, hards will last a bit longer, but the rear-wheel drives can't get them up to temperature as fast, and it's all going to be a big thing as to whether who wins. Might be a little bit unpredictable, you never know. And if it ends up raining for the whole weekend, then another anti-climax. So that's been the thoughts on the weekend's touring car stuff. If you think I've made some good points, then thumb up the video, and for more of everything I do here, then you can always subscribe and get that bell on so you never miss out on any future stuff I do around here. Big thanks to the supporters of this channel via Patreon, and if you want to help with the buying up of images and keeping things running around here, then a link to Patreon is in the description, along with links to Discord, socials, and there's also an F1 store affiliate link down there too, where I get a kickback on anything you buy. There's some discounts available this week, I think, probably about 15% off or something. So until next time, I've been AdmiralLaWind, have a great day wherever you live in the world, and I'll see you all again soon for another video. Goodbye.